Hello and welcome to this video where we're going to be talking about how youth sports have changed over the years. And they've changed quite a bit. And that's what we'll be looking at and investigating in this video. We'll be talking in this video, one's about participation, right? And how participation levels have dramatically changed over time, what the structure of these participation looks like now, the costs and what that has meant, and traveling and that impact on that, and how to bring some balance back, all of that and more. That's what we'll be covering in this video. Participation is probably one of the bigger things in the community aspect. This might be the biggest change, and it's kind of the theme that you'll probably get throughout this video. You'll hear it in some of the other videos I've done, because personally I think it's a huge deal and not all positive by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm going to talk about American Legion Baseball now in the state of Maine. And in 2004, one of the local high schools in the largest city, Portland, Maine, has two high schools. Both are very good programs, but Deering High School had an outstanding team. Two guys on that team ended up playing professional baseball at the highest level, and that summer, that team went on to win the American Legion national title. So fast forward about a decade, and when my son's now in high school, and American Legion was beginning to feel it and die out because of travel teams. So my son's senior year, he decided he was going to be on another travel team. He already knew where he wanted to go to college. He was playing American Legion baseball. He was also had an opportunity to play on a travel team that had a lot of elite talent from our state on that team. There was 8 different guys on that team who ended up playing Division I baseball. And he loved that experience, and he loved playing with some of the guys he used to play against. But he was somewhat disappointed in that American Legion team, which would have combined two of the best high schools in the state, would have had, if all these kids had played, and several of them, their names were on the roster, but they didn't play much because American Legion was still dominated by weekend games, and weekends, my son included, a lot of these guys were off traveling. So that American Legion team, which would have been just a phenomenal team, really having a chance probably to go to the World Series, didn't because of the travel schedule. And a couple of these guys who were pitchers might not travel one day to play American Legion that day, but their pitching was also predicated by travel schedule. That now there's no American Legion baseball in the southern part of our state. It's gone. So that is a perfect example of one of the changes over time when we talk about participation at local levels. So it's not just American Legion. Again, we could talk about this on local soccer leagues, local basketball leagues, like YMCA leagues and programs like that. As younger kids are going to these travel teams and these travel programs, these youth programs are dying. Little League International reported a 20% decline in participation over a decade. As I said, American Legion in the state of Maine it's the southern part of the state doesn't exist anymore. When you talk about participation in local leagues, I got a friend who's, I think I mentioned this in other video, who's down in South Carolina, and there really was no Little League option. It was travel baseball, and that's usually run by fathers who select teams, and there's no real huge governing organization. So there's a lot of politics involved and get involved in these teams. So what happens with some kids? They don't play the sport at all. So participation rates are declining. I grew up police athletic league in the morning, Little League, Farm League, Little League, Senior Little League in the evening through summer times. Police athletic league doesn't exist anymore. That Little League is seen the participation numbers dwindle, the number of teams dwindle. I could talk about basketball, the same thing we've seen, and youth soccer leagues. Participation rate, community involvement, community programs, playing with neighborhood kids, all declining across the board. So the other issue that's changed is the amount of money parents need to spend, right? When you could used to be able to sign up for some of these local leagues for $20, $50, 60, right? Whatever it is, depending on, you know, how long ago it was. But compared to what you have to spend now for these travel teams, minuscule amount, right? Thousands of, you could be spending like travel baseball, 1,500 up to some of these elite teams, five and even more, up to closer to $10,000. That's not the travel. That's just being on the team, the uniform, the extra practice time, and all the tournaments that you have to pay for to go to. Right? That's a lot of money. This is one reason why it's become a $30 billion industry. And when you start doing that at young ages, you're spending a lot of money on your children over the years to get that benefit of participating in youth sports, thinking you're going to be doing it at a higher and higher level, and which improves the power of the skill development, all that, which is questionable. Let me be right up front from my own experiences. All of that is probably one of the biggest changes, and it's driving some families out to go, no way, we can't do this beginning at the ages of doing it. You're talking, if it's just 4 years of high school, you're talking 6 to 12 to maybe $20,000. For some families, it's like, no, we still got college to come. No way, can't do it. So they stop participating. When local leagues suffer, communities suffer. I have other videos that go in detail about that subject, but that's probably one of the biggest changes. And some of the messaging that used to be handed down from coach to coach to coach as people stayed within communities, and the message resonated throughout community leagues, is now being lost. It's being lost not only because the community leagues aren't there, but there's this now increased pressure to try to build up that competition level, right? To try to compete with these travel teams. So you got to make them a little more intense in the view of some. You got to kind of raise that level, and in the messaging becomes a little bit different. The pressure gets increasing. The stress level gets increased. There's a whole lot of just change from the principles of what used to be driving some of these leagues. Yeah, about skill development, of course. Yes, about competition. Of course, we're talking about athletics, learning to do that. But there was an underlying message of doing it the right way. And as people began to focus more and more on winning, and it kind of pushing those limits and all of that, the intensity level began to increase, and you began to hear some of these stories about the overzealous parents and coaches, and some of those negative kind of things. So those are probably some of the biggest changes we've seen over the last few decades. So how do we bring some balance back? And I've said this in some other videos. From my professional, personal opinion, looking at research, own experiences of my kids, experiences of the kids I've coached, the first place starts with your parents out there. Started with me, right, when my kids were younger. And at particularly younger ages, and I don't have a perfect cutoff line, right? But definitely before middle school, and even in middle school, start saying no to these travel teams that are charging you thousands of dollars and promising all these coaching and playing against all this top competition and being able to get better and all that. Say no. Your child hasn't even developed the athleticism at that ages to really be able to stand out. The skill level can be much better developed through within local leagues by something called deep practice, which I teach and talk about a lot. That is far more powerful of developing the skill than these big elite travel teams. And you can see that with some of these hotbed areas that have developed elite athletes only by playing locally. All right, but yet they develop these elite athletes. They don't go on these super travel teams and all that. We've got to learn these lessons, and hopefully it'll begin to swing back. But with that, again, parents, it's you taking leadership, you taking ownership, you volunteering, you helping out, you helping to raise the money and start building up these local leagues again, especially at young ages, but even up into the early teen years. High school, all right, now we can begin to talk a little bit more um, about some other things, and I'll save that for another video. So that's where I would begin to bring balance back to this subject. Well, that ends another video, and I would love to have you subscribe to my channel. Check out another video, how has AAU impacted youth sports participation? So check that one out today, and then come back and see another.